Win the games you are supposed to win the way that you are supposed to win them. We saw that on Saturday in the Swamp. And honestly, it was exactly what the Gator faithful needed. A solid performance against an inferior Vanderbilt team. It was by no means a perfect performance, but y'all, it was a dominant one. This was a win the Gators really needed. And it kind of seems weird and, I don't know, different that we are pleased and relieved after a game against Vanderbilt. But truth be told, this is where we are right now. Vanderbilt always plays the Gators hard, and they beat Florida last year. Up there in Nashville, the Gators have not been good on the road. A loss against this Vanderbilt team could have completely derailed the rest of the season for the Gators. But right now, as it stands, we sit at 4-2, 2-1 in the SEC. Honestly, right on track. And there was a lot of positives that we can get to about this team. Let's start on offense. Statistically, Graham Mertz had another great day. He was 30 for 36, 83% pass completion rate, 254 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Now, I will tell you, I think stats can be a little bit deceiving. He missed some open throws. I think he made a few wrong reads, but it's okay. He was serviceable. It was a decent day for Graham Mertz. And listen, the positive is that Florida took some shots downfield. The negative is that most of Mertz's incomplete passes were those downfield shots. But you know what Graham Mertz did do better than Florida has the last couple of games? Kept drives alive. Florida moved the ball better than they have since probably the first half of the Tennessee game. Florida's running backs had a lot of success too. I don't know about you, but I was slightly concerned about the Gators going into this game because they were going to be without Trevor Etienne. Apparently, we didn't need to be. Montrell Johnson had 18 carries for 135 yards. And how about Treon Webb? 4 carries for 70 yards. They also combined for 6 catches for 31 yards. They really, really did a great job stepping up and filling in for the loss of Etienne. We really didn't feel it, and that's huge. One of the things that I have harped on in several videos is Florida's lack of explosive plays. It has been really hard to find plays over 20 yards for the Gators this season. And we still need more. I'm not saying I'm satisfied with our number of explosive plays, but it got better on Saturday. Montrell had runs of 34 yards and 28 yards, and Webb had one for 43 yards. All 3 of those explosive plays came on drives that eventually led to points. Those three runs, 17 points came from those drives. That is huge. Explosive plays keep drives alive. That is what Florida has been missing in previous games. So it's a big sign of improvement for me. And getting Trey Wilson back, huge shot in the arm for the Gators. He is so talented, so elusive, so good. I hope the Gators continue to feed him. His ability to get yards after the catch is something that the Gators have really honestly desperately been missing. He also scored his first touchdown of his young career, so congratulations to him. That's awesome. Arliss Boardingham had himself a day as well. And, you know, it was a little bit of a redemption game for him. If you remember last week against Kentucky, he bobbled a pass that ended up being intercepted. And then that drive led to 7 points for Kentucky. But yesterday, he found his footing a little bit. He caught 2 touchdown passes and helped the Gators convert on 3rd and 15. Y'all know that is my favorite down and distance. It kept that drive alive and eventually led to points for the Gators. He finished with 7 catches for 99 yards. I think the Gators have found a true tight end in Boardingham and another sign of progress for this really young offense. Gators did give up 3 sacks, but the offensive line did better this week. And I think a large part of that is because the coaching staff did some things with their play calling that played to our strengths. Instead of asking this offensive line to physically dominate the Commodores straight up, which I don't think was going to happen, and I don't think will happen with the lines that we continue to play throughout the year. But if you call your plays for the level of talent you have, for the strengths that you have, good things happen. And I think we saw that. Cameron Waits also helped fill in the loss of Kingsley Eguakun and Austin Barber really well. He's only 10 months back from a major knee injury, so exciting to see him back in there and exciting to see him do well for the Gators. Let's talk about a little bit the other side of the ball, defense. Gators looked better than they did last week. There is still a ways to go, but I am willing to chalk last week's abysmal performance up to a fluke at the moment because the defense was a lot better against Vanderbilt. Florida only had 2 sacks, and honestly, even that was kind of deceiving because one of those was on a 4th down to end the half. Vanderbilt's quarterback was scrambling way longer than he normally would, held the ball much longer than he would, just to kind of see if he could make some magic happen. So I really, it counts as a stat, but there's really only one true sack that happened yesterday. The defense did force a fumble, though. This is something that we have talked about on this channel a lot. You have got to win the turnover battle. The Gators didn't win it yesterday, but they at least tied for it and they forced that fumble. And that's important. I was really impressed with guys like Shamar James, Jaden Hill. Nice to see him back. Jakeem Jackson, TJ Searcy, Bryce Thornton. All of those guys looked really good. They really are starting to come into their own. You can see their development. I still need this defense to be more physical, but I'm excited to see the forced fumble, and I'm excited to see some more pressure on the quarterback. And obviously, Vanderbilt is no juggernaut, so I'm not trying to make this into more than it is. And I'm not saying that it's a barometer for games to come because it's not. But this is a good place to start. These are things we weren't seeing against the lesser talent that Florida has played earlier in the year. So it is progress. Let's talk a little bit about special teams. Now, listen, I was at the game, so I didn't get to count every single special teams play, but I think we had 11 men on the field every single time. So improvement there. Hats off to Jeremy Crawshaw, 3 punts for a 58-yard average. That is killer. Trey Smack, 1 field goal for 40 yards. We have a solid kicking game again, Gator fans. That's huge. No clue why Smack was sitting on the bench for the first part of the season, or even last season for that matter. But I'm really glad that he is our starting kicker because he's solid. I have faith in the kicking game. If a game is going to come down to a field goal, I like our chances in it. And that is not something I could have told you at the beginning of the season. Now listen, there are no trophies or awards for beating Vanderbilt, but you've got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. And the Gators couldn't do that last season. So this is something that as a fan, I needed to see. I'm sure you guys needed to see it. Could you imagine if Florida had lost to Vanderbilt at home after that Kentucky game? Whew, it would not have been good. And guys, we were sitting there at 7-7 at one point. And I don't know about you, but I was looking around wondering, is this really going to happen again? Are we really going to let this happen? This team responded. They didn't like what happened at Kentucky. They didn't like the backlash they got from it. They didn't like that they let each other down. And they responded well, and they beat a team the way that they should beat them. And that's a step in the right direction. The Gators had 25 first downs to Vanderbilt's 13. They outrushed the Commodores 215 yards to 64 without Trevor Etienne. They recovered a fumble, and they forced 2 other turnovers on downs. That's progress. Now we arrive at the meat of the schedule. Florida hasn't been good on the road under Billy Napier for whatever reason. But the Gators head to Columbia this Saturday with a chance to change that tune. Vanderbilt was the easiest game left on our schedule. And now that we took care of business in Gainesville on Saturday, we head into what is probably the next easiest game for the rest of the year. This isn't a great team yet, but it's a young team that continues to grow each week. It is a team with fight. It is a team with heart. They are improving. Progress isn't linear. The next step in the growth that needs to happen is to be able to win away from the swamp. The Gators have the opportunity to do that on Saturday in Columbia. 3:30 kick. I think that's a great time for the Gators. I would rather not play up there at night. That is a difficult stadium to play in. The later in the day it gets, the more difficult it will be. I like a 3:30 kick for this team. We know they told us they don't like noon games. I think that this is where they make the next step in their progression. But for today, as fans, I think we should be proud of this team. We should be proud of their fight and the progress that they are making. This was a win we needed to see. When you look at the steps for becoming a championship level team, one of the very, very first steps is beat the teams you should beat the way you should beat them. Check. The Gators did that against Vanderbilt. All right, guys, we have lots of content coming your way this week. Make sure that you are locked into the channel. Hit that subscribe button. We've got some cool interviews. We'll have previews of next week's big game against South Carolina. So make sure that you are dialed in right here. Enjoy your Sunday and go Gators.